Welcome back to the first FIDE Online Olympiad for people with disabilities, and we are ready for the sixth round. Today, both of us, me, Polina Torochkova, and my amazing colleague Ulrike Vogel have been involved with FIDE's DIS Commission for quite some time, and we are broadcasting from the unique event in the history of chess for people with disabilities.
We are starting to come towards the end of the first part of the competition. Today we are seeing the sixth round of the 7-round Swiss system, which makes up this first stage of the Olympiad. By the end of tomorrow, the best 4 teams will qualify to play in a double round semi-final, and from there the best 2 teams will advance to the finals, while the 2 remaining teams will compete for third prize. The time control in all stages is 25 minutes plus 10 seconds increment. And we are really seeing some great diversity in the teams with all abilities and ages. And having this dedicated Olympiad for players with disabilities allows a much wider participation. As anticipated, we did have some really interesting games happening yesterday. And as you can see, Polina and myself, we are still talking with each other despite Russia defeating the German team, though only just, let's face it. So the second Polish team had a really strong showing yesterday, whilst the first Polish team got defeated by the Philippines. Ecuador has also really been showing some solid games, and they are currently on place 11 on 7 points. And with only 2 rounds to go, a lot can still happen. We are definitely looking forward to keeping an eye on the games with our special guest today as well. So which particular game did catch your eye yesterday, Polina?
Well, let's look on the game of the 5th round of the team match between the 2 leaders, Russian team number 1 in Germany, Smirnov Alexei from Russia against Von Eriksen and Egret from Germany. Thus, the Queen's Indian defense was played: d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, b6. The opening in a solid defense to the Queen's pawn game. Third black's move, b6, increases black control over the central light squares e4 and d5 by preparing to fianchetto the Queen's bishop, with the opening deriving its name from this maneuver. As in the other Indian defenses, black attempts to control the center with pieces instead of occupying it with pawns. White's move g3 is the main line against the Queen's Indian. It contests the long diagonal by preparing for fianchetto the light squared bishop. But white plays a3, bishop b7. The Petrosyan variation prepares knight c3 by stopping bishop b5, forcefully pinning the knight, named after Tigran Petrosyan, a Soviet Armenian grandmaster, the world chess champion from 1963 to 1969. Then there was knight c3, bishop e7, d4, e to d5, c to d5, black castle kingside, e4, rook e8, bishop d3, a5, black played too passively. Therefore, white has achieved his central pawn break first. White has a spatial advantage and white is much better. White successfully attacks on the king side and black's position fell apart. White crashes through against black. German chess player resigned on the 25th move because white mates in 6 moves. As a result, Russian team number 1 won the match against Germany and became the sole leader with 10 points out of 10. Poland team number 2 is 1 point behind, and today these teams will play a decisive match against each other. We wish good luck to everyone. And to make sure that you can follow the action today, have a look on Tornello, where you can keep an eye on the live games, and the direct link is also posted on our Facebook page.
Yeah, it was definitely some interesting games yesterday, in particular with Russia-Germany, where on the top board, obviously, it only ended in a draw. So it was really interesting to see, because obviously both players were quite close in rating as well. So it's really great to see that we have, a couple of really exciting and unexpected results in some of the games as well. And I think, it'll be really interesting to see, just like I said yesterday, just one day where you're not on top form can really make the difference. And I think we definitely saw that, where, the table is not quite looking as I think a lot of people might have anticipated now. set some sort of quite surprising teams further up in the ranking as well. And you know, at this point in time, probably in order to actually qualify for or have any chance to go into the finals, I think, you know, teams really need to eye at least sort of 11 points, you know, so those that are currently on 8 points, they really can't afford to lose any more games. They have to, you know, they have to win or at least draw in their games to have any chance to making it further. And obviously with currently we've got 2, 4, 6 teams on 8 points. So I think today and tomorrow will definitely be decisive on who's going to clinch those all important points to go up there. So yeah, we're really excited to see what's going to happen.
Yes, sure. And I think with our special guest today, we will pay attention today to the key matches. It's Poland, team number 2 against Russian, team number 1, and Germany against Croatia as well.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think, you know, obviously sort of some of the challenges of, well, doing those broadcasts from our own homes. Obviously, we saw yesterday, you know, I think when we had Robert on, of course, we had a couple of glitches with his connection, and it just really shows how dedicated he is to making sure that his team can participate. If he was even struggling, I was mentioning to Polina yesterday, I live in an apartment block where we do occasionally have the fire alarm go off, even if it is a false alarm. And lo and behold, half an hour after our broadcast yesterday, it did go off. So fingers crossed, it's not going to happen today. I think you've had some things as well where your neighbors were getting up to moving things around, wasn't it?
Sure, yes. So I think internet connections and neighbors are the things which we face up every day during online meetings. And well, now I think we can start to introduce our special guest for today.
Yeah, right. Perfect. So we'll be back with him very shortly. Hi, Nigel. Perfect. So we have Nigel Short now with us here, FIDE Vice President and of course former World Championship challenger. Hello, Nigel. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Ulrike. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. No, we really appreciate you making the time to have a bit of a chat to us today. Obviously, and also have a look at some of the really exciting games that will be going on today. And so, how did you get into chess in the first place? What made you start chess?
Well, I picked it up from my family, like many people do. I saw my dad playing against my older brother Martin when I was about 5 years old. So it was one of those sort of wet weekends up in the northwest of England, of which there are many. And we had, you know, we couldn't go outside to play. We were indoors, and I think we had just about exhausted all other board games. And my dad took out his chess set, and he hadn't really played since he was at school. So that was it. And I was hooked more or less from the beginning, I would say. But it probably wasn't until a couple of years later, the Fischer-Spassky match in Reykjavik 1972, that I started to really take it seriously. Joined a club after that and began playing in my tournaments.
Nigel, you defeated Victor Korchnoi in simultaneous when you were 10 years old in London. Do you remember what emotions you experienced then?
Yeah, I remember it was a very long game, actually. It was, I think, at least 6 hours, which is pretty long, you know, when you're 10 years old, maintaining your concentration for about, you know, that long. And also, we had to drive down during the day because I'm from the Northwest, and to go down to London and then drive back. So it was a very, very long day. And I remember also meeting David Bronstein at that time. So it was great to meet two legends and to play against one of them.
No, that's really amazing, isn't it? And I think it's sort of nice, and I think, you know, so especially at that age, you sort of, it doesn't probably sink in until at a later age then, isn't it, that you've actually who you really played against, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that is definitely true. Of course, I knew he was a very famous grandmaster, and in fact number 2 in the world at that time, or was he number 2? Anyway, yes, because actually Bobby Fischer had more or less stopped playing at that time. So yes, I think I mean nowadays we live in this very, very connected world. And it's, you know, younger people, they don't realize how things were back then. And my dad realized it was a big story. In fact, there were even political cartoons about this the next day in the newspapers. But when he got a message from a cousin in Australia, then he knew that this was a big story, because chess in those days didn't get such news.
Yeah. Perfect. Obviously, there is at the moment as well quite a surge in talent, in young talent in Asia, Europe, and in America. But like obviously, sort of, we spoke yesterday with Robert Cartender as well, who's doing a lot of work in Africa.
Yeah.
I know that you've been to Africa yourself as well. What sort of talent is waiting there, and what needs to be done to encourage that talent, in particular in Africa?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think I've been to something like 24 different countries in Africa, so I you know, I have some experience in the continent. And of course, it's, you know, it's not a monolith. It's a very, very vast and varied place. You go from places like Namibia, which you know, have a pretty, you know, Botswana and Namibia with pretty high standard of living, actually, you know, very normal places. And then you can go to some other places which are, you know, there is a lot of poverty, real poverty, and there it's much more difficult. I particularly recall one visit I've made in 2006 to Lilongwe in Malawi, and I went to visit a girls' school there with Kezi Masukwa, the president of the federation. He's actually now a minister in the government. We went and we gave a couple of speeches, and we actually, when we entered the hall, we were met by this incredible singing. It just started on its own, this singing, everybody singing together, and it was so beautiful. really quite remarkable experience. And you know, it was even rapturous, I would say, the whole experience. They were tremendously enthusiastic. And then when we were talking to the headmistress later, just a thought occurred to me. I said to her, "How many chess sets do you have in this school?" And she looked at me like, you know, what sort of a question? Well, she said, "None."
Yeah.
None. And I was completely shocked by that. I gave her some money there and then. I said, you know, just go and buy some. And you've got that great untapped potential there. One of the big issues in Africa, of course, is the expense with traveling. Yeah. That is very, very high indeed. Where there are connections by plane, they are very expensive. Usually they don't have budget airlines. So that makes things very difficult. So you've got this combination of low income and high expenses there. So I think I'll be quite honest with you. You know, I would rather see chess played over the board, person to person. You know, that's what I would like to see. But this has been a very, very strange year. And although I consider it to be a disastrous year, many good things have come out of it. And there has been this massive explosion of interest in chess online, people playing. So I think that's been tremendously good for the game. The trick is, of course, to sustain this, because sometimes you have these bursts. I mean, as I mentioned, Fischer-Spassky back in 1972. At that time, basically everybody was playing chess. They were interrupting television programs to give you the update on the games. So it was a big thing. But then by the next year, the vast majority of those had dropped out. Yes, the numbers had increased, but they had not increased by that much. And I think that is a challenge for us. You know, we've got this dreadful pandemic, and I suspect by the end of next year, we will have an approximation of normality. I know we're getting these vaccines and everything, but it will be many, many months before they're rolled out in sufficient quantities to make a difference.
No, totally. And I think it's great for us, you know, as you said, the huge expenses obviously from traveling within Africa. You know, we have quite a few African teams which have had their struggles. I know, you know, Robert Carten was telling us that they sometimes weren't able to play on all boards just because of the internet connection. And I know that obviously sort of you've been quite involved with Thomas Luther. And had long chats with him sort of in Batumi in 2018 to talk and to see how DIS chess can be taken further. Like how did this come along, and why is it so important for you?
I'll tell you how it came about. I mean, it was very, very strange. I'll be absolutely honest with you. It came out of a negative idea, and the negative idea then became a very positive idea. So I think the key moment for me, the sort of epiphany, really what actually happened in 2016. And in round one of the Chess Olympiad in Baku, England played against the blind team. And we played somewhere in a corner and on these boards, and it was so badly organized that in fact I had to make the moves for my opponent as well. So they didn't have enough helpers. It wasn't right. So it was incredibly distracting for me, and not only for me, for the other members of the team. It probably took 25 moves before he got used to this. I mean, you can have blundered and lost the game by then. And you know, my first idea was a very simple one. Why do you have these teams for people with disabilities in the Chess Olympiad? Actually, there is no reason for this, because the Chess Olympiad is a tournament of nations. And this is, you know, a disability is not a nation. So it didn't make any sense to me. So I had this discussion with Thomas actually 2 years later. And we were sat on the bus in Batumi, and I went to speak to him. And it's like one of those things where when you talk about disabilities, you have to be very careful, because if you say something which somebody perceives as being negative, everybody hates you. They absolutely hate you for this, and your reputation is ruined. And my idea was that there shouldn't be these teams playing in the actual Olympiad. But we had to do something, and we had to do something that was better than what we were doing in the regular Olympiad. And Thomas, he listened to me, and then he just said, well, I think you're absolutely right. You know, he said, I totally agree. That, and then he started to say many things that we had failed in chess, because the Paralympics is now very, very big indeed. And there is a huge amount of money involved in this, a lot of support in different countries around the world. It's a very big movement. It provides fantastic opportunities for people with disabilities. And so this was basically, we were in total agreement on this, that we should do something like this, although the precise details were not worked out. You know, rather than tagging on teams which are not nations in a far corner of the actual Olympiad, you know, let's have a proper Olympiad, but for people with disabilities. And this provides far more opportunities. There are many, many players there around the world. They will get a chance to do that. So this is where the idea came from. I would never have had the courage to go further on with it if we didn't have Thomas's wholehearted backing. And in 2019, I got the idea. I wanted to speak to the FIDE president, Arkady Dvorkovich. And I had a number of issues that I wanted to discuss with him. And I said, he was in Slovakia at the time. I said, do you mind if I come and see you? So I flew out to Slovakia to meet him. And this was actually one of my main things. And I said, this is what I think we should do. You know, we should have a Paralympics. I know we've got a different name that's done for legal reasons and so on. And Arkady, to all his credit, he agreed immediately. And he's actually a very, very brilliant man. When you get to know him, he's very, very smart indeed. And he produced, I swear, he produced a format for this event there and then, just immediately, and actually quite a good format. And so, you know, I wrote this down. Then I spoke to other people. Nikos Kalesis was very important, but I live in Greece, and he, of course, is in Greece. We met here. I said, you know, this is what we want to do. So I wasn't involved in the drawing up. I just said, this is the basic idea. Let's go ahead with this. And so he drafted the thing. You know, I said what we wanted. He drafted it, and then it was presented to the FIDE board meeting in Baku. It was last year. That's when we used to meet physically and talk to people. We used to shake hands with people. Yes. I don't know whether you can remember that far back, you know. And so the idea was presented at that meeting, and just everybody said, great. Now, it has changed because, you know, we've got different circumstances. Everything has gone online. The format has changed a bit. I don't really care. I think it's a great, great idea and something extremely positive. So that's, you know, the fact that it was not exactly the original idea, it's irrelevant, you know.
Well, we have almost 60 teams participating, and I think that is the key message ultimately, isn't it? You know, we've gone from having 3 dedicated teams in the Olympiad to actually having a separate event with 60 teams, which is great, and there's so much more capacity for growth ultimately.
Yeah,
you know.
No, I totally agree with that, and also it has made some federations think a lot more about these issues. Yeah. And that has been, I think, one of the very, very positive things about this whole experience. Yeah. You know, I mean, federations that basically have never really given any thought whatsoever. Some of them, some federations is actually, you know, quite organized, but it's a limited number. Yeah. And many more, they've barely given it a thought. So, you know, I consider the whole thing to have been a positive step. And, you know, the first one is always the most difficult. Yes. And you have to see where you're going to go forward from there.
And I think, you know, we'll have much more teams joining in the next edition, you know, whether it'll be over the board or whether it will be online again remains to be seen, I suppose. But I think, you know, it's great to see as well that we have some of the federations where you know, that are sort of not your typical strong chess countries that suddenly have sort of come up and actually have had some really good games. So how about if we have maybe a look at some of the games that are going on at the moment?
Yeah, Sure.
Have you been able to open Tornado app?
I haven't looked at it because I know that one of your other questions was you were going to ask me whether I've been doing things. So
we'll be getting back to that one.
I'll tell you what, because I've actually been writing a book. And so I have been very focused upon that for the last several days. So I managed to get to the age of 55, and I've written hundreds and hundreds of articles. I've never written a book or any book worthy of mentioning, and this is going to be my first one, and I've done about 3/4 of it so far. So it will appear. I have confidence that it will finally appear. So shall we have a look maybe at the very first board? Because obviously on the top board we have the second Polish team playing the Russian team. So that would be board 1.1. Yeah.
So obviously Russia defeated Germany yesterday, just about by a fraction.
Right, let me have a look.
Of course.
So what am I looking at? I've just tournament lobby.
Yes, so if you then go on to round 6, it's sort of you have the standings round 1 onto round 6, and then if you right click
first board,
first board, correct, 1.1.
Yeah, okay, let's have a look. All right, so that's a typical Spanish Spanish opening. So yeah, looks fairly even, I would say. That would be my impression on that. Should we go on to the next one?
Yes, well, shall we, let's have a look at some of the sort of more, because we've got also, for example, if we have a look at board 3.1, which is the Philippines versus Ukraine, because we know that Severino didn't have the best of starts, but the Philippines teams has come back quite a bit.
3.1, so I can see.
Yes, 3.1, yeah.
Right, so hang on a second, 3.1. Yeah, Severino. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've played him actually.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Filipino player. I think I played him in the Thailand Open. So
so obviously he's down a little bit on time compared to his opponent Oleg Tuka.
Yeah, but he's got a slight advantage. And whose move is it? Is it White's move here? It's no, Rook DC1, Bishop.
I think it's Black's move at the moment.
Bishop E6 is a good move, and it's a bit better for Severino, I would say. He can exchange bishops and go Rook E5, check maybe. And he can hope to press there.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely keep our fingers crossed, because we actually had the coach of the Indian team on earlier on this week, so so we sort of had a bit of a chat around that as well. How about if we have a look at board 5.1, which is the first board of Ecuador versus the first Polish team?
Yeah. Oh God, he's got a high rating, hasn't he?
Yes, Marcin he's probably one of the strongest players. He's one of the grandmasters, and he's been playing. He's a very sort of well-known name within the disabled chess community. So he's a blind player from Poland who's literally, I mean, he virtually can't see anything.
Right. Okay. Well, that is an impressive impressive rating. I always think, it's must be really very serious disability for chess, not being able to see. My thoughts on this is, if you have been a sighted player and you suddenly lose your vision, I don't think it would make that much difference to a Vladimir Kramnik, for example, who plays fantastically good blindfold chess, and some other people as well. So they, you know, once you've got that experience, but if you start off as being blind or, you know, barely able to see, I would think it's very difficult to come up to such a high level like that. So it's impressive indeed. So yeah, so he is material ahead, an exchange up, and unless something quite dramatic is happening, which I don't see, I would expect him to convert this into a win.
Yeah. I think he's also significantly up on time compared to his opponent, isn't he?
Well, I don't think the time is the issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the position is the key thing.
No, of course, of course. And Polina, is there any particular game you would want Nigel to have a quick look at as well?
Maybe we can look at the first board of the match, Germany against Croatia, the board 2.1.
Okay. 2.1, right. Okay. Oops. Yeah, this is a bit dour, I would say. Well, I mean, just talking in general terms, white has a slightly better pawn structure, but black has two bishops. Not that much in it. I would probably prefer to have the white pieces, but you know, it's not that exciting, I would say. So that looks like a hard fight ahead.
And I would suspect that both sides from Croatia and Germany are going to be fighting, because ultimately they are sort of in that bracket that could make it into the top four. And obviously, you know, any game that they are losing now is not going to do them any favors. So yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see. Yeah.
Oh, that's a very yeah. Now there's a piling up on this threat. I see Rook D7 now wants to play F4. So this knight is going to have to move somewhere, maybe to G1. Does that work? Probably it's working. So yeah, black is quite active here. I think that knight's got to move pretty sharpish out of the way, because there's a big threat actually of F4. So knight G1. No, it's gone Rook D2. Well, it's the same sort of idea. Maybe that's even better.
It'll definitely be interesting to see how that game is going to turn out, because I think they're definitely fighting for every point today.
yeah, we can see that. Yeah.
And Nigel, speaking of analysis, when you started playing, there were no computer engines, and you had a different way to prepare. Do you think that have engines killed the chess or taken the soul out of chess?
Well, that's a very good question, actually. It's I think they've done two things. I mean, I think chess should be like a beautiful woman. It should be a bit mysterious. And if you know too much, then yes, it can spoil, I think, the excitement. And I think that has happened in some areas, that, you know, there were things that were considered to be interesting, worthy of exploration. They have been shown to be dead ends. The engines have analyzed them out. So the engines are like chainsaws going through the Amazon. The Amazon is a very, very big jungle. And but if you keep chopping down, eventually you end up with nothing left. At the same time as all this, I believe the engines have shown us that there are all sorts of things which are possible, which we never even imagined before. So there are whole new strategies which we had never considered. So it's a bit of give and take. I understand your point. It's a very good point. It's a very relevant point, but it's a dynamic thing. It gives and it takes at the same time, and it's just a fact of life. This is what modern chess is about. Things have moved. They've gone forward greatly in the game. In the old days, you would have these, let's say, to analyze a game, you needed many, many hours or even a couple of days, and you would try and work things out. You'd think hard, you know, maybe write things down and so on. And I reckon in half an hour with an engine, you can get a pretty good idea what's going on. I mean, you can go deeper than that, of course. You can go much, much deeper if you want to. But even a very, very superficial look for half an hour, you get a pretty damn good idea of what was happening in your game. And if you missed anything really important, like, you know, some blunder or something like that, that's going to show immediately. So things have advanced. The new generation, everything is accelerated. The engines are incredibly powerful learning tools. And it doesn't stop. That's how things are going forward. So, you know, people are playing better chess these days. There is a tendency from older players like myself, and I don't just talk about chess, I talk about all sports. You know, people say, oh, it was better in my day, you know, oh, you should have seen it back then. But actually, it's really rubbish. Yes, there were some brilliant players in my generation, your Karpovs and Kasparovs and so on, like that, who just basically stand up in any generation. But the point is, there are more better players these days. That is the big difference, that the general standard is that much higher. But one thing I can say is that the engines are equalizers in that there is a democratization of information. And this is one of the things that in former times, if you lived in some place, let's say you were in some part of Africa, which is not too developed, unless you had chess in your immediate environment, you had no chances at all. Whereas now, if you have access to the internet, there are incredible tools and information that's available there for free. And one of the astonishing things are, you're always looking for, a good coach. And if I take my phone, I can download an app in a matter of seconds that will thrash Magnus Carlsen. Even on a phone, it will slaughter the world champion. So this is like, if you learn to use your tools, well, you have the possibility to progress very far and very fast. So and those things are available to everyone, which they weren't. The old days, it was better if you lived in a big city where they had a good library there, library like books. Yeah. Those are things behind me, We used to read books once upon a time, and I've got about 3,000 chess books here. So, you would read books, but you can absorb information much, much faster with computers. So I'm not going to be nostalgic for the old days. It's just different now, and in many ways it's better. Yes, some things have changed for the worse, but in many ways it's much, much better.
I think it probably would have made, if Queen's Gambit, if Netflix would have set the movie nowadays, it probably would have been a lot less, cinematography involved in, Beth imagining the chessboard in the top of the ceiling. I think it's sort of that is, I think, that's sort of the interest ultimately, where you don't have that option to just go on the computer, put it into the system, and get out what you should have been doing. Yeah. I think how did you find that movie and the portrayal of chess back then?
It was quite funny because if you think about this, because there are lots of these scenes where she's staring at the ceiling in her drugged state and imagining the chess games. I was thinking, have you ever played against Vasily Ivanchuk? Have you ever played against Alexei Shirov? Have you ever played against Hikaru Nakamura? They're looking at the ceiling all the time. The guys, the board's in front of you. They're staring up to the heavens for inspiration, because that's exactly what they're doing. They are seeing the things in their mind. So it's not some absurd cinematic artifice. It is, yes, it is a kind of representation of what is going on in the mind. So it's not silly, actually. Not silly at all. So I can relate to that sort of thing. But you have to remember, this was a novel, and it was a novel that came out in 1983, and chess world is very, very different from that time. There was no Judith Polgar. Well, there was a Judith Polgar, but she wasn't relevant at that time. I mean, she became relevant a few years later. So it is a far-sighted book in many ways. And yes, of course, it's loosely based on Bobby Fischer. I mean, you notice Bobby Fischer's never mentioned in the mini-series, and there is obviously a very good reason for that. So it's all very, very loosely. It's a female Bobby Fischer, obviously with a number of differences. But I loved it. I don't know about you guys. Did you?
I personally really enjoyed it, and I think it's sort of, you see certain things that, you know, when you go to tournaments, when you are involved with chess, you have, you know, chess players do have, you know, those sort of, I enjoyed those visualizations, because that's exactly what I imagine is going on in a chess player's head when they are sitting at the board, because that's the only way that you are going to be able to go ahead and plan ahead and be at the top of your game. So I actually really enjoyed it, and I have a lot of people around me who are like, "Oh, have you watched this? Like, aren't you involved with chess?" I was like, "Yeah, I am," and they really loved it. I think you, Polina, you quite enjoyed it as well, didn't you?
Yes, me too. Yes, as well. Yes.
Yeah, and I liked all these the details, the sort of period costumes and all of that. I thought that was done very, very cleverly. And
do you think that's that particular mini-series might actually help? Obviously, you said earlier on there has been a boom over the last year in chess. Do you think something like that will help to keep that boom going?
Well, there is no doubt. I mean, that is a fact. I mean, we know for a fact that there has been a huge spike in the number of people who have been wanting to learn about chess, and actually also in the purchase of chess sets since that. So I think it has been inspirational. I mean, as I say, the trick is really whether these people are around in a year's time. That is the big unknown, and that is our job, to make things as attractive as possible for them. But what was it? It was #1 in a very large number of countries, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it had something like ridiculous amounts of, I think 28 million views or something like that within the first 4 weeks. So no, it's really
60 million I saw.
Yeah, I can't remember now the number.
Yeah, 60 million I saw. Yeah. So it's gone very well, and actually non-chess people have been mentioning this. They've been watching it and enjoying. That's really the key thing. And as chess players have said, I mean, normally when we watch a cinematic representation of chess, we're in pain because we're in physical pain, because it doesn't really usually represent what we know. And this was, I think it was close. You know, I think they did a very, very good job of conveying it. Obviously, they have to do certain things to make it more exciting, which you would expect. You know, my dad, who actually runs a chess club, he's not a good player at all. He's on a very, very low level. And he was saying, yeah, but they were moving a bit fast there. I said, Dad, they have time trouble. I said, what do you want? You know, this is a series. Are you supposed to sit there for half an hour waiting for them to move? You know, It could easily be explained that you know, people do move at that speed. You know, just actually not all the time.
No, of course, of course.
And I want to ask you, this question is a fun one. If you are a chess piece, what would you want to be?
A chess piece. Everybody likes, yeah, I want to be a knight. Sir Nigel Short. I think that's a brilliant one. I want to be a knight. Yes. I'm hoping Her Majesty the Queen will be a knight.
Why would you want to be a knight?
Why not? Sounds good, doesn't it?
I suppose. But no, we're currently...
Everybody likes this piece. It's something a bit unusual. So
yeah. There we go. No,
you know, diagonally, you've got Harry Potter fans. You've
yes.
got, bishops.
Yeah, no, perfect. Thank you so much, Nigel.
And if you're a monarchist, kings and queens, of course.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate you making the time, talking to us about some of the things that you've been up to and where you're seeing chess going as well. So it's really great to have a chat with you.
And I'm very glad I've caught up with you because now I'm going to be paying more attention.
Good. Good. No, I think, you know, like today, obviously, we sort of the first games are sort of starting to be decided now. I think tomorrow will be really interesting as well. So it'll definitely be worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I'll do that. Take care. It's been a pleasure joining you, and all the best.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Nigel. We really appreciate it. Excellent. So I think that was a really interesting chat with Nigel to just, you know, find out what he's been up to and also how he's been involved with the DIS. Have you been keeping an eye? I think we've had the first results coming in now as well. Have you been keeping a bit of an eye, Polina?
Yes, of course. I think well, tomorrow we will have a very interesting broadcasting with a decisive and very intensive matches. So to end it, I'd like to say that today we had the 6th round of the first FIDE Online Olympiad for people with disabilities. Everybody, please enjoy this online Olympiad. Stay tuned for tomorrow. Thank you for watching.
Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow.